It's officially spooky season. Could you tell by my shirt? Halloween as a whole needs no introduction, really. It's one of the most popular and most practiced holidays, at least here in the US, and video games don't really skip over it either. Whether it be Halloween, Call of Duty adding Chucky, or Fortnitemares, the big three get Halloween events pretty much every year. And of course, I gotta make it about the 3DS. Around this time every year, many people, myself included, like to play a couple spookier games just because it's in season. So, if you're in a similar position, you may wonder what options you have on the 3DS. And well, that's what I'm here for today. In this video, we'll be going over some of the best horror games on the 3DS, as well as taking a brief look at some just relatively spooky inclusions. Right off the bat, there are three distinctions that are going to determine what kind of experience you'd get. Number one, do you have a new 3DS or Circle Pad Pro? Number two, is your console modded? And finally, number three, to play most of these games, I imagine you have to have parental controls turned off. With all three boxes checked, your options are the most varied, but even if you just have an old vanilla 3DS, you still have some pretty solid spooky games to sink your teeth into. The first game I want to talk about is probably the most popular, which is Resident Evil Revelations. It's a third-person horror/action shooter with some light puzzle elements that have become very standard with the Resident Evil series. I actually really like this game, and I played it all the way through on the new 3DS. It initially launched as a 3DS exclusive, but eventually found its way to the Vita and PC because it's just that good. As a Resident Evil game, it holds up tremendously well when you consider it was made for mobile consoles in 2012, and it was specifically made for the 3DS a year after it came out. Jeez, this is one of the best looking games on the entire system. It's also one of the few that really scratch the FPS itch on the system. I don't want to spoil too much, since it is a story-focused game, but in terms of gameplay, you'll be spending most of your time here gunning down mutants and zombies while managing ammo, grenades, and puzzle items. The story is pretty good, but overall cheesy, which is also standard to the Resident Evil series. It's a good enough story to keep you invested, but it's not like movie quality, and you'd get the most out of it if you had to play the other games in the series. You don't have to, since this is technically a spin-off and not a mainline entry, but you'll understand a lot more about the characters and setting if you already have, since it does tie in pretty directly to Resident Evil 2, 3, 4, and 5 in some areas. But again, you don't have to play anything else in the entire series. The story itself is pretty segmented. In terms of horror, Revelations is pretty light on the scare factor. Some of the monster designs are unsettling, but most of the scariness comes from being jump scared by an enemy you didn't initially spot. It's scary enough to call it a horror game, but nowhere near the level of something like Alien Isolation. Oddly enough, this game doesn't include a Mercenaries mode, which for the record is RE's take on an endless mode, because it's an entirely separate game on 3DS. Resident Evil 3D Mercenaries sounds nice to have on the system on paper, but in execution it's kind of lacking. For one, they had to overinflate the Mercenaries mode with tutorials and special objectives, because they're trying to take what's essentially a bonus and stretch it into an entire $40 game. So it's honestly bloated. I vastly would have preferred if it was just a bonus in Revelations, not only because it's overpriced on its own, but if it were packed in with Revelations, it probably would have worked with a second Circle Pad or a C-Stick. Yeah, Resident Evil Revelations supports the Circle Pad Pro or C-Stick, but oddly enough, Mercenaries was never updated to follow suit. I imagine this was because you can't really move while shooting in Mercenaries, much like the original RE4, but the option still would have been nice. And this links back to what I said earlier. If you have an OG 3DS, both of these games are perfectly playable. They load faster on new models, and Revelations supports the C-Stick, which makes it feel a lot more like a traditional shooter. Also, Mercenaries supports multiplayer, so, that's kinda cool. Luigi's Mansion 1 and 2 are playable on the system, that's a given, but gosh, these aren't really horror games. I'm sure most of you are already aware of them, but I know if I didn't bring them up, somebody would have commented about it, so here you go. There's still good options if you want something that just kind of captures the vibe of Halloween, and if you have parental controls turned on. But if you're looking for something really scary, Dementium Remastered is likely going to be your best bet on the system. It's a fully 3D, first-person survival horror game that sees you playing as an injured patient trying to escape a haunted hospital, just infested with demons. This is a pure survival horror game, but you're not completely defenseless. Within some time, you do get a big iron on your hip, but even then, the shooting really isn't the main focus. You're still navigating a massive hospital, which is, for the most part, pretty damn dark outside of your flashlight cone. The tone here is also just really dark. There's a bit of an analog horror aspect to the game with some of the monsters' designs and the unsettling voice talking over speakers, and just thanks to the 3DS having a more retro pixelated screen. This is a true horror game, straight up. It doesn't pull its punches like at all, even though it's on a Nintendo console. There's a lot of uncensored blood. There's a lot of uncensored blood and fully animated death scenes, along with some light gore. So this is definitely more of a hardcore horror title, which makes it all the more impressive on 3DS. There is a sequel, but unfortunately, it seems a third game is unlikely, despite how many ports exist for the first two. The IP was just passed around after the devs went bankrupt, and the game's artist Greg Hargrove, who then had the IP, tragically passed away from cancer. And then the IP was picked up again in 2018 by Tui, who then went on to port the game pretty much everywhere. Even though you could play the game on more modern systems like Nintendo Switch, PS4, PS5, and Windows 11/10, I'd still say the 3DS is the best way to play. On those modern consoles, the game just looks kind of stretched out and dated. Not bad, but I'd say it's pretty obvious these lower poly models were intended to be viewed on smaller screens, so it's simply more scary on the 3DS. On the low-res screens on the 3DS, the game just looks like how the devs intended, and you're missing out on the second screen that manages your inventory in any of the modern versions. So again, I'll stand by the 3DS remaster and say it's currently the definitive version of Dementium. Overall, a great horror game, just sad it's surrounded by so much tragedy in real life. Still worth a playthrough, if you have it. The remaster was unfortunately an eShop exclusive. Oh great. So now the only way to play Dementium is to suck it up and buy one of the modern ports, hunt down the original DS card, or, you know, if your console is modded, it's no problem really. Again, going back to what I said earlier. Spirit Camera is a game I don't have, and honestly, I don't think I'm missing out on much. When I picture somebody playing a horror game, I imagine them sitting down with their nice console or PC and just getting sucked in, not wandering around the house like an idiot holding essentially dual 240p cameras in front of them. Spirit Camera is an AR ghost hunting, exorcist game. I can see what the devs were going for, but the idea just seems kind of pointless. It would have been way better if they had just made this a traditional 3D game. Even worse, a lot of the game is dependent on the included booklet with the physical release, so you'd have to hunt that down along with the game card to get the most out of it. And even then, there's not a lot here to get. It overall especially seems pointless now when we have VR horror titles. Now, this isn't the devs' fault. There's no way they could have predicted the popularity of the Quest systems or malls adopting VR headsets as an attraction. But this whole idea is just so weak when you could play full-on virtual reality horror games that are much more immersive and frankly funner than this. Still, if you could find a complete copy, this may be worth picking up just to mess with, but I really don't see this being scary or all that much entertaining to, well, anyone. Just play Phasmophobia. Gosh, did I really just say that? Kill me. Well, for official straight-up horror games on 3DS, we can't end off on that. So I want to talk about a port that not many people know exists, at least it seems like it. Surprisingly, the first Resident Evil has a complete port on the DS, and it's slightly enhanced from the original release, making it an even sweeter deal. That's not to say Resident Evil 1 ain't popular, far from it, but most people seem surprised to hear it's on DS. And yeah, I know, it's a DS game, not a 3DS, but on 3DS there are ways to enhance it even further so you get widescreen, which makes it better to play on 3DS. It's the full game, another survival horror puzzle shooter thingamabobber. A great option if you want to scare yourself. But, yeah, that's all the noteworthy horror games I could find on 3DS. Surprisingly, you have a lot of options on DS as well, along with tons of spooky visual novels. But I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't ever really scared by reading a book. I liked the original Jurassic Park novels, but I wasn't ever really frightened by them. So, and I mean, the horror visual novels that exist on 3DS have this stupid anime art style, and I really don't see myself being spooked at all by them, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone on this. Check them out if you're interested, but I don't have anything to say. You have a lot more options on DS, but this is a 3DS video, and I've talked about that old fart enough. So now that all the normies are gone, we can finally get into some homebrew stuff. FNAF 1 through 4 have 3DS ports and are fully playable from what I can tell. Now, I'm pretty bad at the series, so I haven't gone far in any of the ports, but I sampled all of them, and they're plenty playable. Hell, the second screen makes for a pretty nice camera switcher. They seem to be based off the old iOS versions, so they're not the definitive way to play, but, I mean, come on, was anyone expecting that? Doki Doki Literature Club, another horror anime visual novel, has an unofficial 3DS port. I've never played it, but it's about school students who take their own. It's pretty dark, and I'm not going to sit here and act like anyone looking for horror games doesn't have a general idea as to what this game is about. Call of Duty Zombies also has a remake for the system. Not necessarily a horror game, but these old zombie models still give me spine tingles from time to time. And they're frankly just more unsettling than any visual novel I've ever read, I guess. And I mean, come on, it's COD Zombies. It's awesome to see here. And with that, I guess there really isn't much else to say. I mean, Doom, of course, has an unofficial port, but if we're calling that a horror game, I'd argue Quake is scarier, which would take me down a huge rabbit hole and completely derail the video, so I'm gonna stop here. Thank you for watching, happy Halloween. Hopefully this video showed you some cool new games to pick up, and if you like this video and that subscribe button is white, you're doing it wrong, click it to make it gray. Have a nice day.